Hello, and welcome to the Distillery. I'm your host, Harry Lee Shanglun, and today we have a very special guest, Dr. Andreu Roca. How are you doing?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks, Andy. Yeah, whereabouts are you? You're in a park somewhere, it looks like.
Yes, I don't even know the name of this place because I came here with my friends and they drove me here. It's called Nicholas Gardens or something like that. It's in the Dandenong Ranges.
It looks really beautiful, and also it sounds like there are people around the area.
So many people, maybe too much, but this weekend was the first one people could go out and the weather is just perfect. So I cannot blame them. I'm doing the same.
And you are a doctor at a Melbourne ICU for children, is that right?
Yes, you have two ICUs in Victoria, one in the Royal Children's and the other one in Monash. So after working in the Children's Hospital, I moved now to the Monash Children's.
How long have you been working there, and what's your role actually involve?
So I've been working in Monash Children's since February, and I'm one of the senior registrars there. That means that I'm one of the doctors in the ICU, and during the day there's someone more senior than me, but overnight I'm alone in the hospital. So I'm the doctor that takes care of the kids that are in the ICU.
Amazing. What's the vibe been like through the pandemic now that we're really kind of in the midst of it?
I think that it's like everywhere else. We got very scared at the beginning when we saw what was happening first in China and then in Europe. We were really scared and we got really stressed because we were preparing for the same to happen here. So it was a lot of mobilizing resources and preparing all the protocols for when that wave would hit us. We were really busy those days. All staff would be deployed into some of the updates that we had to do. We opened 30 new beds. We prepared for it. We changed our rosters. Now we were working double shifts, um, and nothing has happened. So now it's super quiet because the roster has been doubled and we have lots of beds that are empty. So, but that's only good news, and we are still ready for it to happen. So, if it was to happen, we are ready for it now, and we have no excuses. We have had the time to get ready for it.
Mm. So it's really interesting. Australia has done a lot of mobilizing, a lot of preparatory work after finding out what happened overseas. And then we didn't get hit in the same way. And so we have all this extra capacity. A lot of people are now pointing at that and saying, oh, that's a waste of resources, or, we don't have to be in lockdown. We should let people, it sounds like there are a lot of people taking advantage of the decreased isolation measures. What's your take on it as a doctor? Do we need to be more strict? Is this a time to relax?
To be honest, in answering your first question, if it was a waste of resources, I think it was not. In fact, I still think that we fell a little bit short on preparing because we saw it coming, but at the same time we relaxed a little bit, like, oh, it's less here, so we are not gonna go full on. It has taken so many lives across developed countries because sometimes when you see the news and you see countries that are not as developed, you think, oh, that's not going to happen here because we are better, but it's not like that. It's hitting all countries the same, and we should have got prepared for the full of it. That would have saved so many lives if the wave came here. And to be honest, I'm not sure that we are still out of risk. We are in much better condition than all those other countries, but we were very lucky at the beginning that we closed the borders very fast. We didn't let the disease to spread, and we were during summer here where people are less snotty and they touch their face less, and but because of that they infect less people. But we're getting to winter now. History tells us that the first wave is only the first wave and that the second wave is bigger than the first wave. So we can only be ready for that, and there's not enough resources for it. And if at the end of the day it ends up being nothing, it's only because of the effort that we have put as a community and because we stuck to the rules that they imposed. So I think it is time to relax a little bit. We have to have a balance. We cannot forget that the economy has to keep rolling because many lives depend on that as well. But uh, it was now the time, not before, when we have very little cases and the risk of contracting COVID in the community is very low now. So we should socialize, but we should be ready to see a spike on cases as well.
Mm. Yeah, that second wave. I mean, I think I am expecting it. Epidemiologists are warning us that it's very common historically, so that's something to be aware of. Something that I'm interested in is the scale of emergencies that you deal with. You know, humans as society, we face a lot of long emergencies, things like climate change or systemic oppression. We face these medium length emergencies like COVID-19. And then you personally in your work also experience very short limit situations where you're having to make second by second decisions
Mm,
that can mean life or death.
mm,
How do you swap between those different timescales? And
mm.
are there actually links between them all that make them all common or similar?
Yes, I think that the answer to all of them is training and formation. Like you have to be educated on the decisions you have to take, and then everything becomes easier. To be honest, this pandemic kind of got me unprepared, me and the service and most of the doctors, because we had never faced a situation like this. So that proves that education is the base of everything. I'm very quick at taking decisions in ICU, like when there's life or death and it's fast. I don't even have to think because I already know the answer before the question gets there. But in this second emergency, when we had to get ready for the pandemic, we were not prepared. We had to sit down and study on how to react for those things because we really didn't know anything about it. So yeah, that's the link between them. I think that studying and getting ready for them is the only way to be ready for them and be able to answer appropriately.
I'm interested in when you say you don't have to think when you're making decisions in ICU for that short
Mm.
time scale. What do you mean by that? Can you elaborate and tell us what it feels like?
Because, for example, when you have a patient that is very sick and you are very junior, everything impacts you. So you pay attention to every single detail because you don't know about it. For example, if I get blood results, I have to sit down and think of every blood result. If I get a parent that is crying on the floor, I'm like, oh my God, I don't know how to deal with this situation. But now I have gone through this so many times that I can get the results very fast in my head. I don't have to spend a second on it. And then when I see a parent crying on the floor, I know how to approach them and how to manage the situation. Sometimes it's delegating someone to like, can you take care of that parent while we do this or that? But I don't have to think so much about it because I have already been there. I have already done it. And now it comes naturally. That's especially because we have different degrees of emergencies. We have patients arriving very sick, but they are not about to die in the next few hours. Um, for those patients, I've learned how to approach the parents, how to, even if things are very grim, give them one little string of hope and ask them to hang on that, even if it's a very small string. Like, this is, he has a chance. We're gonna make the best of that chance. We might not succeed, but we have to hold on that. And that changes the frame of mind of those parents. So I always use that now. So this is a tool that I have acquired and it's very useful. And it's again, practice and education. When situations become really dramatic and we know that the patient is gonna pass away, again, I have learned how to approach the parents and the team because sometimes I have teams that are not very senior. For example, sometimes I have to go to ED and they don't deal with those situations in the emergency department, or I go to rural hospitals and they are not used to do that. So I know how to now manage those teams and those families. And most of the times it's just being quiet and relax yourself. And then when they see that you are not stressing, they lower. Sometimes it's just being the bigger voice and say, I don't want to hear anyone other than me. If you have to say something, just whisper to each other. And when you make the room more calm and quiet, things flow much better. And it's much gentle to the parents as well. Because if you see doctors shouting around, even if it's just because they have no experience and they are stressing, of course, as a parent, you will stress. If you see doctors that are determined, they're doing the job and they are not shouting and not stressing, the family comes with it much better. And in terms
Mm.
of the family, it's the same. It's, don't lie to families if things are looking bad. and sometimes they need direction because they are lost on what to do, because their kid is passing away. It might happen in half an hour and 1 hour, and they don't know how to cope. So you just have to tell them what to do. Sometimes it's, look, I know you're very sad, you're angry, you might be angry with me, you might be angry with the system, you might be angry with life because this happened, but now it's not the time to do that. Now it's the time to hold the hand of your kid and say goodbye, because that's the last time that you're going to be with him. And then when you tell them, they react and they say, oh, true, and then they go and do it, and that's very good for them. And again, that's something that you learn when you have many cases. At the beginning, you usually have someone senior that does it for you, but at the beginning I would have been like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, this is happening, I'm so sorry, I would be apologetic. And now I'm not. I'm more like giving them instructions like, this is happening, you need to do this and this and this. And afterwards they come to you and say, thank you very much for your guidance, because we were lost, we didn't know what to do, and you gave us a peaceful end of life for our kid, and we were able to say goodbye. So yep,
so it sounds
just
like
learning and doing it.
Your experiences give you that practice and confidence in order to play a role for that moment, where people are lost and needing comfort, needing expert guidance and assurance. And it strikes me that it's an empathetic process, but it's also one that is of leadership, of taking charge of the situation and letting people feel comfortable in that moment.
Yes, in fact, I see you doctors usually when we have a resource situation, or we have a patient that is getting very sick, that is rapidly deteriorating, we organize ourselves as a team, and the ICU doctor is always the team leader, because we are trained on that. So we are the ones who, maybe we are not going to do the diagnostic process or even the intervention, but we're going to be in one corner of the room just directing and leading the situation, because that's what we're trained for. And you need training to get there.
Do you ever encounter situations that still surprise you or catch you off guard, where you yourself are quite like internally stressed, or are you now in a position where nothing faces you, even if it's new?
It's getting harder and harder. At the beginning, everything would stress me, and I would go through it once and again, thinking I should have done this, I should have done that. But now I have learned that there's only so much that you can do, and sometimes you just have to accept that that's it, and you could have not done anything better. And I'm getting better at it, and this is what allows you as well to tell the parents, because before I would have been very focused on the patient. I have to do more things and do more things and do more things that you know that they are futile, but you want to do more because otherwise you feel guilty. And now I've realized that when you hit the wall and you say, okay, this is enough, this patient is gonna pass away, and you've done everything you could do, then you can refocus your efforts to just comfort the family, make it nicer for the family. And yeah, I don't get that stress anymore. In fact, I always have an adrenaline rise, because you're supposed to, you have to act fast, you have to think fast. But once I hit that wall, once I think, okay, you've done everything, I always ask my team, is there anyone that has any idea? And that includes nurses, paramedics, everyone that is around. If they don't have any idea, and then just calm down, let the adrenaline win off, and then I can refocus into making everything comfortable for the family. So
I feel like some of the stuff that you talked about has direct links also to your professed philosophy of hedonism outside of work.
Yes.
At least in the sense of, like sometimes you have to let things go, and things are as they are. How does being put in these daily limit situations influence your decisions to live your life outside of work? And how do you approach life outside of work?
Yeah, it has changed my approach so much, because you see so many people losing their lives. I'm a pediatrician, so I only see kids, and I see so many. For me, the worst case scenario is when a teenager passes away, because teenagers have their social life, their social network constructed, and they are missed more than a 3-month-old baby, because a 3-month-old baby, the parents are devastated, but they don't have a lot of history with them, and there's no social network, but the teenagers do. And I have seen so many lives taken early, with so many projects, so many things, and so many worries that they tell you that was not important. I regret that I spent my time doing that or worrying about that. And that's that just makes you realize that you have to live life um, in the best manner you can. You have to seek pleasure in short and long term, but also short. You cannot sacrifice your today life to obtain a better life tomorrow, because maybe there's no tomorrow. In saying that, I'm not doing apology of oh, carpe diem, don't think about tomorrow, do everything you want. No, you have to be responsible. You have to protect your future. You are most likely to have a future, and you have to protect it and try for it to be the best, but not at the expense of sacrificing today. So yeah, I do study a lot, but I study less than what I could, and I spend more time with my friends and doing things that I like, just because of that. Because if I was to go tomorrow, there's nothing in my bucket list that I would say, oh my god, I wish I had done that. So I have ticked all the boxes that I wanted, and of course, there's many things that I want to do, but if I'm not doing them, it's because I don't have the time to do them in a way that if I'm doing something, if I go skydiving tomorrow, I cannot go diving tomorrow. But I'm, I'm happy with what I have done, and I want to keep it like that. And I'm not saving big amounts of money to retire, or I'm not um, sacrificing all my life because of my work and not having a social life. I'm trying to find
Right.
the right balance, and I found
Right.
that that balance for me, it's focused more on life and less on work and like saving or sacrificing things for the future.
Yeah. So that for your values end up shifting the uh, work that you do away from planning for the future, although you are still saying be responsible for that,
Mm.
towards, let's not sacrifice the present moment and the desires and needs of the now.
And do you know what? It's I have done both things, because when I started studying medicine, I would spend 11 hours in a library, and you are less productive when you do that. When you only have one thing and you put all your efforts on that thing, you end up not seeing. You see all the trees, but you don't see the forest. And I have found that I progress faster when I abstract from it. So yeah, I still have to do exams. I still have to progress on my training like every other doctor, but by being happy, and when I sit down and study, I do it because I want, and because I think, oh, I'm going to spend 2 hours doing this, and I focus, and it becomes easy. When I was studying all the hours of the day, that was terrible. I was
Mm.
not as efficient as I am now. So being happy, and that makes you much more productive.
Also, just want to apologize to you. Not that I've done it, but just that you're missing out on all the EDM festivals that you had been planning to go to. They've all been cancelled because of the pandemic.
Yeah,
Sorry for your loss.
that's my guilty pleasure. Sometimes it surprises when I'm at work, and I always wear my shirt and my trousers, and people think that I listen to classic music, but I don't. I listen to EDM a lot, and it's my guilty pleasure. It makes me happy, and those festivals are full of people that just gather to be happy, and that sense of communion, I found that it's really really nice. And yeah, I'm very sad that they all got cancelled, but well, 2021 is going to be a good year.
Yeah, I'm sure all the festivals get shifted. Your schedule will be full of hard style and
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, good times. I'd love to also chat about where you're from, because you come from a region that is seeking independence, and as a result, there's quite a bit of civil unrest. Can you tell us more
Mhm.
about the situation there?
Yes. So for those who are listening and might not know about this, because although there's a lot of unrest there, it's not as famous as Hong Kong or other areas of the world. I come from Catalonia, which is smallish for Australians, very small. For Europeans, just smallish. It's a small part of Spain in the northeast of Spain. It's about the size of Denmark or Switzerland, even Belgium. It's 10 million people, and it's a region of Spain that has been seeking independence for like 300 years. Since Spain conquered us, we are the last colony of Spain. We are not considered colony. were considered part of the country. But 300 years ago, they declared war to us. They won, and now they rule us. Which, again, for Australians, 300 years ago feels like ages and ages and ages and ages ago. But for Europe, this is recent history. And since then, there's been a struggle. There's been a push for our country to regain the independence we once had. And even more so since, I don't know if people know, but in Spain, there was a dictatorship. And that dictatorship ended not that long ago. My parents lived under the dictatorship until they were grown-ups, until they were, I think, 15. They were teenagers when the dictator died. And the dictatorship was really harsh against my region because, as most of dictatorships, he wanted to unify the country and erase all the cultural differences. So he forbid our language because we speak a different language in our region. He forbid all cultural events like dancing, special dance that are only done on my region. And people were getting killed because of that. We all have family that got killed because of speaking the language or participating in some kind of cultural demonstration. So, of course, at that moment, every push would have been like suppressed. But that generation now is growing up, and now there's more freedom out of the dictatorship, and people are starting to mobilize again and raising their voice like, oh, we want to become independent. Because despite the dictator being dead, the system that he implemented is not dead. It's still nowadays that there's lots of restrictions on where you can use your language. It's your mother language. It's a language that has been spoken for more than 1,000 years in our region. But still, if I have to go to a trial, I won't be able to speak my language because 90% of all trials in my region are held in Spaniard. And that puts me in a disadvantage because my mother language is Catalan. If I have to have a trial, I probably want to be able to speak my own language. But that's only one little example of the oppression that's still happening against our language. So people have started to raise their voices. They started to organize. Social media helps. WhatsApp, Telegram. People are starting to organize demonstrations, and for the last 10 years, we have had the biggest demonstrations that have ever happened in the earth. Up to 1 million people, 1.2 million people, similar to the sizes of the ones in Hong Kong, have gone to the streets every single year. And that's amazing because we are a 10 million people country, so 1 of people are in demonstrations, and those demonstrations happen in one place, so you might have to drive for 4 hours to get there, which is crossing all the region, to be honest. And again, those demonstrations have never been heard from the central government. People get angry. We try to push for independence. They said, no, you cannot do that. We said, let's vote for it. They said, no, you cannot vote for it. Then we tried to
there was
organize
an independence referendum, right? And then
yes, we tried to organize a referendum.
Elected, got thrown in jail eventually, like quite recently.
Exactly. What happens is that we have a parliament in our region, so we have always had our own government. So we still have it, but it has very reduced competencies. So they only rule on small parts of the daily life. But we do have our own parliament. And for, I would say, 14 years, that parliament has been independentist. So the majority of Catalans have voted for independentist government, which shows how much of the population.
Sorry, talking about very serious things. And then there's this child like waving a pink frisbee, which is great.
Yeah, they don't know about civil unrest.
Oh, we don't know.
Maybe they do. So we have been voting for those independentist governments, and the central government has literally sacked them, saying, no, we don't like this government, you have to vote again, which is completely against democracy. Like, we have already voted. And every time they sack our government, we vote again for the same government and with a bigger majority, which really makes them angry, but that's fine. And because of this government...
Kind of like almost comedic if it weren't so serious and oppressive.
Yes.
Like this continual attempt to try to stomp you down, and then you're just like, we're growing in our numbers, we're getting more and more support.
it's really infuriating, and even more when they are so confronting, because the vice president of Spain said those words, it, it's fine that we are a democracy, but what cannot happen is that they vote whatever they want. And it's such an oxymoron in the same sentence, like how the vice president of our country can say that. It's like, it's fine if you vote, but what cannot happen is that you cannot vote whatever you want. Of course I vote whatever I want. And if the majority of the people agree on something, it, the law obeys people. That's democracy. It's law obeying people, not the opposite. So it's really infuriating.
That's fascinating in the context of worldwide, we're seeing a loss of faith in democratic process and in democracy itself. I think the Museum of Australian Democracy has produced, or at least linked to research, which demonstrates that up to 30% of Australians, particularly young Australians, no longer have any faith in democracy and democratic process. And yeah, just like seeing democracy fail in different ways around the world, including places where there is such a strong democratic voice that is being actively quashed, really raises to light these issues of like how will democracy thrive in the future, or is it even a viable situation?
Well, for me, what raises is that did we ever had democracy? Because I think that we have had oligarchy, like the power of the very little in the top that are in control of the money. For a normal civilian to get up the scale and become someone important in politics is really difficult. You have to have a lot of money in your back, and that reduces to very little people who can access the system. So I don't think that we have real democracy. It's not even, we don't have one person, one vote. We have all this system that protects itself, that you can only choose between certain people that already have the money to create a campaign. So it's not real democracy, and the system protects itself. So my question is, were we ever under a democracy? I don't think so.
Mm-hmm. And stuff that you were saying earlier, if I'm going to try to like draw out some strains, include things like unification in the context of at least the Spanish government in this case, it often involves erasure of cultural identity and heritage. And that's something that I see in other situations as well, where it's like, oh, you just got to be Australian. And actually, Australian becomes this monolithic, monocultural identity in an effort to not like unify with difference, but unify to a hegemonic norm. In Australia, in the case of Australia, like whiteness. The other thing that you mentioned, including things like, the immaterial sphere of things like language being used as a type of, how to put this, ransom or signifier of power and who gets to use it. Things like technology, you mentioned Signal and Telegram being used to organize, and these incredibly large-scale protests happening all around the region. As well as the solidarity that you've expressed implicitly with other self-determination movements around the world, like Hong Kong. So those are things that I at least picked out from the things that you're talking about. Correct me if any of that's like not quite what you meant.
No, that's all true. All what you said, it's really, really true.
I guess. Oh yes, go on.
I agree with the. Spain sees this independentist movement as a nationalist movement. They think that they even the president of Spain called us racist. He said that independentism of Catalonia is racist, that it excludes the Spaniards, that we want to be different and we think that we are better. And I think that it's completely the opposite. That's the argument that they're using to cover their own nationalism. Because I think that all cultures, every single one of the cultures are important. Diversity is important, different points of views are important, and different ways of doing things are important and are to be protected. Globalization has this downside that it kind of makes us all the same. At this moment, if you go to the main street of Shanghai and you go to the main street in New York, they look very similar, and that's only sad. We are lucky and we still have lots of differences. So if you go to China, don't worry, you know that you're not in the US, and the opposite. But it's getting less and less. And Spain is trying to do that. It's trying to make us all the same. And we just think that every single culture must be protected because It's something very really important. Otherwise, we will end up dressing H&M, eating McDonald's, and that's gonna be it. So they try to use
This is an H&M
the,
shirt, I think. So I feel particularly called out now.
which is good. No, it's inedible.
Down with
We
fast
all end
fashion.
up we all end up using those. I think I have a Zara shirt, so that's all good. But at the same time, we have to have a collective effort to protect those things, to protect the small businesses, to protect traditional dances, traditional dressings. Otherwise, we will end up all being the same. And what a boring world to be living. And again, the language is what determines how you think. It modules how you think, and different cultures have different ways of thinking, and some are more linear, some are a bit more convoluted, and that only enriches humanity as a global. So I don't want to raise any single culture, and we just want to protect this culture, not because we think that it's better than the other one, not because we want to be different, it's just because we think we have to protect it, as we have to protect biodiversity, because everyone has very clear that we have to protect biodiversity. But I would say, why would you, what's the ultimate reason of protecting biodiversity? Why is important that we have different animals? And nobody can give you a straight answer like, oh, it's important because, no, it's important because diversity is richness. So we have to protect every single kind of diversity, and that includes sexual diversity, it includes cultural diversity, it includes political diversity, it includes all kind of diversity. Only makes us better. It makes you think that maybe your way is not the only way. So erasing cultures for me, it's a disaster, and it's happening all over the world. There was this, I saw these numbers. I can, don't quote me on the numbers, that I think that about 100 languages disappear every month or something like that. So that makes me so
Yeah,
sad.
huge swath of
And
numbers, yeah, of
I
languages.
don't
Sorry.
want that. I don't want that to happen to my language. I don't want my nephews to not learn this small language because the big language is crashing it. So we have
Mm.
to protect it. And it's a small language, so we have to favor it in order so it doesn't disappear. Because if you put it in the same conditions, the Spanish is the second most spoken language in the world. There's no way that people would learn Catalan if you didn't favor it in a way.
Um, I like the metaphor of biodiversity because it demonstrates that our very survival hinges on it, and I think
Mm.
this is largely true as well of our world at large. We've unfortunately run out of time. I have, so much more that I want to chat about, but I think we'll leave it off for there. If you want to follow Andy on Instagram, you can. Andy's Instagram handle is at Dr. Andreu. Hang on, which way to point? This there. Did you want to say goodbye in Catalan?
Adeu-siau.
Thanks so much for your time. Take care, Andy.
Bye.
You're watching The Distillery. I'm your host, Harry Li Shanglun, and we have new episodes streaming daily. You can check it all out at our website, distillery.site, on Instagram at distillery.site, or on Twitter at distillery site. Take care, everyone. Bye.